It was re-released in 1942, 1947, 1954, 1967, 1971, 1974, 1989, 1998, and 2014. This movie has been repackaged again and again for white audiences. White girls with their mammy dolls have turned into white women with their Gone with the Wind tote bags. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today's video is the last video, for now, in my series about anti-Blackness in the United States. The first video was a basic 101 conversation about the overt and covert ways white supremacy operates in the United States, and the second video was about anti-Blackness in the Asian American community. So if you haven't seen those, I highly suggest you check them out before watching this one. So today, we're going to talk about Gone with the Wind and why it should be archived away. So part 1, what is Gone with the Wind? So for those of you who don't know, Gone with the Wind is a movie from 1939 that I still think holds the record for highest grossing movie ever when adjusted for inflation. It's based on a book of the same name by Margaret Mitchell, which came out in 1936, and the book was so popular that the movie adaptation only came out 3 years later. So the movie takes place before, during, and after the Civil War, and it centers around the O'Hara family who live in the Confederate South and want to fight, and do fight, against the Yankees or the North in order to keep their slaves. And at the helm of the family is, of course, Scarlett O'Hara, one of Hollywood's most remembered anti-heroes, and she does anything and everything necessary in order to survive after the South loses the war and she in turn loses her wealth and status. The film is 3 hours long and details decades of Scarlett's life, from when she's a young woman looking to be wed, to after the war when she's a widow, and to her eventual marriage with longtime sweetheart Rhett Butler, who in the end leaves her due to her shrewdness, but not before raping her. And throughout all of this, the peculiar institution of slavery hangs in the background like window dressing. The black actors in the film, Hattie McDaniel, Butterfly McQueen, Everett Brown, and Oscar Polk, play the roles of Scarlett's slaves. And of course, they're quite happy being enslaved. Mammy, portrayed by Hattie McDaniel, is the black best friend character, who is loving and supportive to Scarlett, but we never learn anything about her. Butterfly McQueen, who plays Prissy, was written to say this line, "I don't know nothing about birthing babies," when we all know black women definitely knew about the realities of childbirth due to the sexual violence they faced. Which, by the way, was already well known, as black memoirs have existed since slavery, but Hollywood didn't and still doesn't give a shit about that. Next, there's Pork, portrayed by Oscar Polk, and he stays with Scarlett even after the war. And in reality, a lot of enslaved people did stay because they just didn't have much or anything, and they most certainly were not given reparations. But the movie frames it as if he wants to stay there in order to help his former master out, as if they're friends or equals or something. And lastly, there's Everett Brown, who plays Big Sam, who saves Scarlett from some Yankee bandits. This scene always perplexed me because it is nice to see an old movie portray a black man as heroic, but he's only saving her because the movie portrays Scarlett as a good slave master, which she most certainly was not. Besides its portrayal of enslaved people, the movie goes out of its way in order to make the audience sympathize with the Confederacy's plight and cause, which was to keep black people in bondage. Most people in the US, and of course outside of the US, don't really realize how much the Civil War meant for the South. They really wanted to keep people enslaved. Decades after the Civil War, during the early 1900s, statues of slave owners were donated to institutions across the country by the sons and daughters of the Confederacy. The US Navy still flies the Confederate flag. The Confederate flag is also sewn into a lot of Southern state flags and is a symbol of white supremacy and needs to be put away, much like this movie. So part 2, the normalization of white supremacist propaganda. And you might be wondering, wow, that's pretty harsh. It's not like Birth of a Nation or something. But here's the thing, it basically is. It's just a more sanitized version and seen as high art or a masterpiece. And in many ways, Gone with the Wind is a remarkable film. The filming techniques were really innovative and new, and the performances are also very well done. But it's also a movie that holds up white supremacy. And both can be true, but one of those outweighs the other. Something being called art doesn't give it any intrinsic value. The conversation around Gone with the Wind needs to change from, yes, it's propaganda, but it's still worth keeping around because film techniques, to it's art, a form of human expression, and that doesn't give it any inherent value, especially if it falsifies history and holds up dangerous ideologies. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of how Gone with the Wind upholds white supremacy. Firstly, it teaches us that slave owners were good and that enslaved people actually liked being enslaved. It desensitizes us to the horror that was slavery and essentially black genocide. And because it desensitizes us, when we learn about the real horrors of slavery, a lot of people refuse to believe that it was that bad. The movie is also a huge middle finger to the actual descendants of enslaved people, which Hattie McDaniel was. They most certainly did not and do not want the suffering of their ancestors to be portrayed as them having a good time in order to make white people feel better about themselves. Secondly, like I mentioned before, the movie romanticizes the Confederate South and the Confederacy in general. Scarlett's main love interest, Ashley, is a Confederate soldier. Thirdly, and most notable, is that Gone with the Wind has never really gone away. It was re-released in 1942, 1947, 1954, 1967, 1971, 1974, 1989, 1998, and 2014. This movie has been repackaged again and again for white audiences. White girls with their mammy dolls have turned into white women with their Gone with the Wind tote bags. White women show this falsification of history to their children at a very young age. I remember being in elementary school and watching Gone with the Wind with my family. I grew up with a very intense Gone with the Wind fan. I saw the merchandise, the tote bags, the dolls, the calendars, and grappling with the fact that this movie needs to be put to rest goes against a lot of what I was taught and what a lot of other people were taught. We were taught that this film is a cinematic masterpiece and teaches us about history, when in reality, the film doesn't teach anything except how outwardly racist the film industry was. You just can't keep toting around a movie about the Confederacy and enslaved people that are happy to be there in 2020. So part 3. What happened to Hattie McDaniel? A lot of white people feel absolved of any guilt they feel watching a movie about happy slaves because the Academy gave Hattie McDaniel an Oscar for her performance. That's why I think it's imperative to talk about the black actors of Gone with the Wind and note how their careers, unsurprisingly, did not take off after it. Hattie McDaniel actually had a very sad life after Gone with the Wind. She continued to be typecast in mammy roles, and she was criticized by some members of the NAACP for continuing to play those roles, when that was literally all she was given. She later died an early death at age 59 due to health complications, and her estate, which was only worth around $10,000, was taken away by the IRS. Her Oscar is also missing. Hollywood was not kind to her and does not deserve a pat on the back, considering all they did to hurt her. Next, there's Butterfly McQueen, who actually took a break from acting in the 60s due to the fact that the only roles that were available to her were that of maids. After leaving acting, she went to the City College of New York and graduated in political science at age 64. She later returned to acting in the 70s and starred in the original production of Wiz in Baltimore. Oscar Polk was a Broadway man and was actually in a few films after Gone with the Wind, but unfortunately he was struck by a cab in New York and died at the age of 49. Lastly, there's Everett Brown, who also died at a very young age at age 51. And he actually has a very extensive filmography, but most of the roles he portrayed went uncredited. So Gone with the Wind not only hurt black people, but also these individuals' careers. No one gave a shit about them. They just gave Hattie McDaniel an Oscar and was like, equal rights, I guess. So the conclusion. There are still plenty of physical and digital copies of this movie for you to watch it whenever you want in the comfort of your own home. It's not like the white supremacist police is going to break into your house and steal your Gone with the Wind VHS. It being vaulted means that it will no longer be re-released on the big screen, on streaming services, or on cable. It means that it will no longer be shown as part of the school curriculum in classrooms across the United States. Its memory will fade, and it will be remembered for what it was: extremely hurtful white supremacist propaganda. We don't need another Scarlett O'Hara anniversary Barbie doll, we don't need the tote bags, and we most definitely don't need mammy dolls or sexy Rhett Butler calendar art. What we really need to do is sit down and see slavery and the Confederacy for what they were, evil. And the way we start with that is laying the most lauded film in Hollywood history to rest. So that's the end of the video. Thank you so much to everyone who comes here every week to support my content. I hope you enjoyed as well as learned something new in this mini-series about anti-Blackness in the United States. And I'll definitely be making more videos about this topic as the fight for Black lives is far from over. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and ring the bell and comment down below what you think about Gone with the Wind. And if you're new here, I post every Friday. Next week, I will post my review of Frozen 2, so if you want to see that, please subscribe and ring the bell. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next week. Bye.